Marcus sat in his expensive leather chair, staring at the wedding invitation that arrived in the mail that morning. The golden letters spelled out Sarah Jenkins and David Thompson, and the date was set for next month. His hands trembled slightly as he held the thick cardstock paper. Sarah was getting married, and it wasn't to him. 5 years had passed since he made the biggest mistake of his life. 5 years since he chose temporary pleasure over lasting love. The memories came flooding, back like a broken dam, each one more painful than the last. He remembered Sarah's bright smile, her infectious laugh, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about their future together. They had been together for 3 years, planning a life that seemed perfect on paper. Marcus had everything back. Then, a successful marketing career, a beautiful girlfriend who loved him unconditionally, and a future that looked bright. Sarah was everything a man could want in a partner. She was kind, intelligent, supportive, and genuinely cared about his dreams and aspirations. She would wait up for him when he worked late, always had encouraging words when deals fell through, and never complained when he had to cancel dates for work emergencies. But Marcus got bored. The routine of their relationship felt suffocating to him. The same dinner conversations, the same weekend activities, the same predictable patterns. He started feeling like he was missing out on something, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what that something was. His friends would tell stories about their wild nights and exciting adventures, and Marcus began to feel like his life was too settled, too comfortable. That's when Rebecca entered his life. She worked as a sales representative for one of their client companies, and she was everything Sarah wasn't. Rebecca was unpredictable, spontaneous, and exciting. She had long, dark hair, wore tight dresses that turned heads wherever she went, and had a way of making every conversation feel like an adventure. She flirted shamelessly with Marcus during business meetings, sending him text messages late at night and suggesting they meet for drinks to discuss work matters. Marcus knew it was wrong from the beginning. He knew that what he was feeling for Rebecca was dangerous territory, but the excitement was intoxicating. After months of flirting and stolen glances, he finally gave in to temptation. It started with innocent coffee meetings that turned into lunch dates, then dinner dates, and eventually hotel room encounters that left him feeling guilty but craving more. The affair lasted for 8 months. 8 months of lies, deception, and living a double life. Marcus became an expert at creating excuses for Sarah. He worked late more often, had more business trips, and started picking fights over small things to justify spending time away from home. Sarah never suspected anything. She trusted him completely, which made his betrayal even more devastating. Rebecca made no demands on him initially. She seemed perfectly content being his secret, his escape from reality. She never asked about Sarah directly, but she made it clear that she enjoyed being the other woman. There was something thrilling about their forbidden relationship that both of them fed off. Hotel rooms in different parts of the city, weekend getaways when Sarah thought he was at business conferences, and stolen moments in his office after. Hours became their routine. But secrets have a way of eating at a person's soul. Marcus found himself becoming irritable and distant with Sarah. He started noticing things about her that annoyed him, things that had never bothered him before. The way she chewed her food, her laugh that suddenly seemed too loud, her questions about his day that felt like interrogations. He was projecting his guilt onto her, making her the problem so he could justify his actions. Sarah noticed the changes in him. She tried talking to him about it, suggesting they go to couples counseling or take a vacation together. She blamed herself for the distance between them, wondering if she had done something wrong or if she wasn't exciting enough anymore. Marcus would reassure her with empty words while planning his next meeting with Rebecca. The end came suddenly and brutally. Sarah had planned a surprise dinner for Marcus's birthday. She had spent the entire day cooking his favorite meal, decorating their apartment, and preparing to give him a gift she had been saving up for months. But Marcus never came home that night. He was with Rebecca at a hotel downtown. completely, forgetting about his birthday and the woman who loved him enough to make it special. When he finally came home the next morning, claiming he had fallen asleep at the office, Sarah was waiting for him with tears in her eyes and his phone in her hand. Rebecca had sent him a text message thanking him for the wonderful night and telling him she couldn't wait to see him again. The message had come in while his phone was charging on the kitchen counter, and Sarah had seen it when she went to plug in her own phone. The confrontation that followed was the most painful conversation of Marcus's life. Sarah didn't scream or throw things. She just sat there with tears streaming down her face, asking him how long it had been going on and why he had chosen to destroy everything they had built together. Marcus tried to minimize it, calling it a mistake and begging for forgiveness. But the damage was done. The trust was broken, and there was no going back. Sarah packed her bags that same day. She didn't want to hear his explanations or his promises to end things with Rebecca. She had given him everything she had, and he had thrown it away for excitement and novelty. As she walked out the door with her suitcases, she turned to him and said something that would haunt him for years to come. "I hope she was worth losing me forever." Now, holding her wedding invitation, Marcus realized just how much he had lost. Sarah had found someone who valued her, someone who wouldn't take her love for granted. Meanwhile, his relationship with Rebecca had ended badly just 6 months after. Sarah left him. Without the thrill of secrecy, their connection had fizzled out quickly. Rebecca moved on to someone else, leaving Marcus alone with his regrets and the realization that he had destroyed the best thing that ever happened to him, for something that was never real. The weeks following Sarah's departure were the darkest of Marcus's life. His apartment felt empty and cold without her presence. Every corner held memories of their time together, and every familiar object seemed to mock his choices. The coffee mug she used every morning still sat in the cabinet. Her favorite book remained on the nightstand where she had left it. Even her shampoo bottle in the shower served as a painful reminder of what he had thrown away. Marcus threw himself into his work, staying at the office until late hours and taking on projects he would have normally delegated. His colleagues noticed the change in him but attributed it to ambition rather than heartbreak. He couldn't bear going home to the apartment they had shared, so he spent most evenings at bars or working out at the gym until exhaustion forced him to sleep. Rebecca tried to maintain their relationship after Sarah left, but everything felt different now. Without the excitement of secrecy and the thrill of forbidden encounters, their connection felt hollow and meaningless. She would call him and suggest they finally go public with their relationship, maybe even move in together. But Marcus felt nothing but emptiness when he looked at her. The woman who had once excited him beyond measure now reminded him only of his betrayal and poor judgment. Their conversations became strained and awkward. Rebecca couldn't understand why Marcus seemed so distant and uninterested now that they could be together openly. She had expected him to be relieved and happy that they no longer had to hide, but instead he seemed filled with regret and sadness. When she would talk about their future plans or suggest romantic getaways, Marcus would respond with half-hearted agreement or find excuses to avoid making commitments. The guilt was eating him alive. Marcus found himself constantly checking Sarah's social media profiles, hoping for some sign that she might be willing to forgive him. But Sarah had blocked him on all platforms and changed her phone number. Mutual friends were polite but distant, clearly having chosen sides in their breakup. His attempts to reach out through common acquaintances were met with firm responses that Sarah didn't want any contact with him. Marcus began to realize the full extent of what he had lost. Sarah hadn't just been his girlfriend. She had been his best friend, his confidant, and his biggest supporter. She was the person he called when he had good news to share or when he needed advice about difficult decisions. She knew all his fears and dreams, his family history, and his professional aspirations. Losing her meant losing the person who knew him better than anyone else in the world. Sleep became elusive as his mind replayed every moment of their relationship, focusing particularly on the warning signs he had ignored. He remembered how Sarah had tried to plan special date nights to reconnect with him when she sensed he was pulling away. She had suggested couples activities, weekend trips, and even talked about taking dancing lessons together. Instead of recognizing these as loving attempts to strengthen their bond, he had seen them as additional pressure and obligations that interfered with his time with Rebecca. The physical reminders of Sarah were everywhere, but the emotional reminders were even more painful. He would catch himself reaching for his phone to text her about something funny that happened during his day, only to remember that she was no longer part of his life. When he got promoted at work, his first instinct was to call Sarah and share the good news, but instead he celebrated alone with a bottle of wine and increasing loneliness. Rebecca grew increasingly frustrated with Marcus's behavior. She accused him of still being in love with Sarah and questioned why he had pursued their relationship if he wasn't ready to commit to her. Their arguments became more frequent and more intense. She couldn't understand how he could be so passionate and attentive during their secret affair, but so cold and distant now that they could be together legitimately. The truth was that Marcus was beginning to see Rebecca clearly for the first time. Without the excitement of forbidden romance clouding his judgment, he realized that they had very little in common beyond physical attraction. Their conversations were superficial, and she showed little interest in his thoughts, dreams, or personal struggles. She was beautiful and exciting, but she lacked the depth, kindness, and genuine care that had made Sarah so special. Marcus started comparing every interaction with Rebecca to his memories of Sarah. Where Sarah had been encouraging and supportive of his career goals, Rebecca seemed more interested in the financial benefits of his success. Where Sarah had listened patiently to his concerns and offered thoughtful advice, Rebecca would quickly change the subject to more exciting topics. Where Sarah had been affectionate and caring in small, meaningful ways, Rebecca's attention felt performative and self-serving. The breaking point came during a dinner at an expensive restaurant that Marcus had taken Sarah to for their anniversary the year before. Rebecca was complaining about the service and making disparaging comments about other diners, behavior that Marcus found increasingly unattractive. As he watched her criticize the waitress for a minor mistake, he couldn't help but remember how Sarah would always be kind and patient with service staff, often leaving generous tips even when the service wasn't perfect. That night, Marcus realized he didn't love Rebecca and probably never had. What he had felt for her was lust, excitement, and the thrill of something forbidden. But love required respect, admiration, shared values, and genuine care for another person's well-being. All the things he had felt for Sarah but had taken for granted until it was too late. He tried to end things with Rebecca gently, explaining that he wasn't ready for a serious relationship and needed time to figure out his life. But Rebecca didn't accept his explanation gracefully. She accused him of using her and wasting her time. She reminded him that she had been patient during their affair, never pressuring him to leave Sarah, and now that she had won, he was abandoning her. The argument that followed was ugly and painful. Rebecca revealed aspects of her personality that Marcus had never seen during their affair. She was vindictive, manipulative, and cruel when she didn't get her way. She threatened to contact his employer and reveal details of their affair, claiming it had interfered with business relationships. She also threatened to reach out to Sarah and tell her additional details about their relationship that would hurt her even more. Marcus realized he had not only destroyed his relationship with the woman he loved, but had also entangled himself with someone who was willing to cause harm to get what she wanted. The woman he had risked everything for was showing her true colors, and they were not attractive colors at all. Breaking free from Rebecca proved to be more complicated than Marcus had anticipated. Her threats weren't empty promises made in anger. Within a week of their breakup, she had contacted his boss, claiming that Marcus had used company resources. for personal matters during their affair. While she couldn't prove anything substantial, the conversation created an uncomfortable situation at work that Marcus had to navigate carefully. Rebecca also made good on her threat to reach out to Sarah. Though Sarah had blocked Marcus on all social media platforms, she hadn't blocked Rebecca. The message Rebecca sent was calculated to cause maximum pain, describing intimate details of their affair and claiming that Marcus had never truly loved Sarah. She painted herself as the victim, saying Marcus had pursued her relentlessly and made promises about their future together. Marcus only learned about this message months later through a mutual friend who felt he should know. The thought that Sarah had been hurt even further by his mistakes made him physically ill. He had hoped that time would help heal the wounds he had caused, but Rebecca's vindictive message had reopened them and added salt to injuries that were still fresh. The workplace situation escalated when Rebecca began showing up at company events she had no business attending. She would find ways to insert herself into conversations with Marcus's colleagues and clients, creating awkward situations that made everyone uncomfortable. His boss eventually had to speak with Marcus privately about the situation, expressing concern about how personal drama might affect important business relationships. Marcus was forced to be completely honest with his supervisor about the affair and its aftermath. The conversation was humiliating and unprofessional, but his boss appreciated the honesty and worked with him to minimize Rebecca's access to company events. However, the damage to Marcus's professional reputation was already done. Colleagues who had once respected him now saw him differently, and he could feel their judgment in meetings and casual conversations. The stress began affecting every aspect of Marcus's life. He lost weight, developed insomnia, and found himself unable to concentrate on tasks that had once been routine. His performance at work suffered, and he made several costly mistakes on projects that had previously been his specialty. The guilt and regret were consuming him from the inside out, making it impossible to function normally. Marcus decided to seek professional help and began seeing a therapist who specialized in relationship issues and personal accountability. The sessions were painful but necessary. His therapist helped him understand that his affair wasn't just about being bored or wanting excitement. It was about deeper issues with commitment, self-discipline, and his ability to appreciate what he had rather than always wanting something more. Through therapy, Marcus began to see patterns in his behavior that extended far beyond his relationship with Sarah. He had always been someone who got restless when things became routine, whether in jobs, friendships, or romantic relationships. He had a history of seeking new challenges and experiences without considering the consequences of his actions on other people. The therapist helped Marcus understand that real love isn't just about excitement and passion. It's about choosing to commit to someone even when the initial thrill wears off. It's about finding ways to grow together and create new experiences within the relationship rather than seeking excitement elsewhere. It's about recognizing that the person who loves you unconditionally is rare and precious, not something to be taken for granted. Marcus also had to confront the selfish aspects of his personality that had contributed to his poor decisions. He had been so focused on his own needs and desires that he had failed to consider how his actions would affect Sarah. He had rationalized his behavior by convincing himself that what she didn't know wouldn't hurt her. But he now understood that betrayal causes damage regardless of whether it's discovered immediately. One of the most difficult realizations was that he had never fully appreciated Sarah's love and devotion. She had been completely committed to their relationship, making sacrifices and compromises to support his career and dreams. She had been patient with his long work hours, understanding when he was stressed, and always ready with encouragement when he faced challenges. Instead of recognizing these qualities as evidence of deep love, he had seen them as boring and predictable. The therapy sessions also revealed that Marcus had unrealistic expectations about relationships. He had believed that love should always feel exciting and new. That routine was the enemy of romance, and that being with one person forever meant missing out on other experiences. His therapist helped him understand that mature love deepens over time, that routine can be comforting rather than boring, and that commitment creates opportunities for growth and intimacy that casual relationships can never provide. Marcus began working on himself in earnest, attending therapy sessions regularly and reading books about healthy relationships and personal development. He started exercising regularly, eating better, and developing hobbies that didn't involve other people. He needed to learn how to be content with himself before he could ever hope to be in a healthy relationship with someone else. The process of self-improvement was slow and often frustrating. There were days when Marcus felt like he was making progress, and others when the weight of his regret felt overwhelming. He wrote letters to Sarah that he never sent, apologizing for his behavior and trying to explain what he had learned about himself. These letters became a form of therapy, helping him process his emotions and take full responsibility for his actions. 6 months into therapy, Marcus made a difficult decision. He realized that as long as he stayed in the same city, working at the same job and living in the same apartment, he would be surrounded by constant reminders of his mistakes. He needed a fresh start, not to run away from his problems, but to create space for genuine change and growth. Marcus applied for a transfer to his company's office in another state. The move would mean starting over professionally and personally, but it also represented an opportunity to become the kind of person he wanted to be. His therapist supported the decision, as long as Marcus committed to continuing therapy in his new location and promised not to view the move as an escape from accountability. The hardest part of leaving was knowing that he was giving up any remaining hope of reconciling with Sarah. As long as he stayed in the same city, there was always a tiny possibility that their paths might cross, that fate might give him a chance to apologize properly or show her how much he had changed. Moving away meant accepting that their relationship was truly over and that he would have to live with his mistakes forever. Marcus's move to Denver was both liberating and terrifying. The new city offered him anonymity and a chance to rebuild his life without the constant weight of his past mistakes shadowing every interaction. His new colleagues knew nothing about his personal history, and he was determined to keep it that way while focusing on becoming a better version of himself. The Denver office was smaller but more collaborative than his previous workplace. Marcus threw himself into his new role, working hard to prove himself and establish credibility with his new team. He was careful to maintain strict professional boundaries, learning from his previous mistakes about mixing business with personal relationships. When attractive female colleagues or clients showed interest in him, he politely deflected their advances and kept all interactions strictly professional. His new therapist, Dr. Martinez, was a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense approach that Marcus found both challenging and helpful. She didn't allow him to wallow in self-pity or make excuses for his behavior. Instead, she pushed him to examine the root causes of his actions and develop concrete strategies for making better choices in the future. One of the most important lessons Dr. Martinez taught him was the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt, she explained, is feeling bad about something you've done, while shame is feeling bad about who you are as a person. Marcus had been carrying both, but the shame was preventing him from moving forward constructively. She helped him understand that he could acknowledge his terrible choices without defining himself entirely by those mistakes. Marcus began volunteering at a local community center, helping with job training programs for people who were trying to rebuild their lives after various setbacks. Working with individuals who had faced addiction, homelessness, and other serious challenges gave him perspective on his own problems. He realized that while his mistakes had serious consequences, he still had opportunities to make positive contributions to the world. The volunteer work also taught him about the importance of service to others. During his relationship with Sarah, he had been primarily focused on his own needs and desires. Even his love for her had been somewhat selfish, based more on how she made him feel than on his commitment to her well-being and happiness. Through helping others, he began to understand what genuine care and selflessness looked like. Marcus developed a routine that helped him stay focused on personal growth. He woke up early every morning to exercise and meditate, practices that helped him manage stress and stay centered throughout the day. He read books about psychology, relationships, and personal development, always looking for ways to better understand himself and improve his character. Despite his progress, Marcus still struggled with loneliness and regret. He would see couples on the street and wonder what Sarah was doing, whether she was happy, and if she ever thought about their good times together. He resisted the urge to check her social media profiles or ask mutual friends about her life, knowing that such behavior would only set back his healing process. One evening, while scrolling through his LinkedIn feed, Marcus saw a post that stopped him cold. Sarah had been promoted to regional manager at her marketing firm, and several mutual connections had congratulated her on the achievement. The photo accompanying the post showed Sarah smiling confidently in professional attire, looking successful and happy. Marcus felt a mixture of pride in her accomplishment and deep sadness that he wasn't part of her life to celebrate with her. That night, Marcus wrote another letter to Sarah that he would never send. In it, he congratulated her on her promotion and told her how proud he was of her success. He wrote about how he had always known she was capable of great things and how sorry he was that his selfish actions had prevented him from being there to support her journey. The letter was filled with genuine admiration and regret, and writing it helped him process his complex emotions. Dr. Martinez encouraged Marcus to consider what he had learned from his relationship with Sarah and how those lessons could inform future relationships. They talked about the qualities that had made Sarah special and why he had failed to appreciate them at the time. Marcus realized that he had taken her stability, loyalty, and unconditional love for granted because he had never had to work for them. The conversation led to an important insight. Marcus had never learned how to nurture and maintain a long-term relationship. He was good at the excitement of new romance and the thrill of pursuit, but he didn't know how to find joy and fulfillment in the deeper, quieter aspects of committed love. He had been looking for constant stimulation rather than appreciating the comfort and security of genuine partnership. Marcus began studying successful long-term relationships, reading research about what made couples stay together and remain happy over decades. He learned that the most satisfied couples were those who continued to invest in their relationship, even after the initial passion faded. They created new shared experiences, supported each other's individual growth, and chose to see their partner's positive qualities even during difficult times. He also learned about the concept of emotional intelligence and how it related to relationship success. Marcus realized that he had been emotionally immature during his relationship with Sarah, unable to communicate his needs effectively or recognize when he was taking her for granted. He began working on developing better emotional awareness and communication skills. 2 years after moving to Denver, Marcus felt like he had made significant progress in his personal development. He had been promoted at work, had developed meaningful friendships with colleagues and fellow volunteers, and had learned to find satisfaction in his own company. He no longer felt the constant restlessness that had driven him to seek excitement outside of his relationship with Sarah. However, Marcus still hadn't attempted to date anyone seriously. He had gone on a few casual dates when friends insisted on setting him up, but he always ended things before they could develop into anything meaningful. Dr. Martinez challenged him about this pattern, suggesting that he might be using his guilt as an excuse to avoid the vulnerability required for real intimacy. The conversation forced Marcus to examine whether he was truly ready for another relationship or if he was hiding behind his regret about Sarah. He realized that part of him felt like he didn't deserve love after what he had done, and another part was terrified of making the same mistakes again. Dr. Martinez helped him understand that these fears were normal, but shouldn't prevent him from eventually opening his heart to someone new. Marcus began to consider the possibility that he might be ready to try dating again, but only if he could find someone who shared his values and wanted the same things from a relationship. He knew that any future partner would need to understand his past and the lessons he had learned from his mistakes. He also knew that he would need to be completely honest about his history and the work he had done to change. 3 years after moving to Denver, Marcus finally felt ready to open his heart again. He had met someone special, not through dating apps or workplace encounters, but through his volunteer work at the community center. Elena was a social worker who ran support groups for women rebuilding their lives after difficult relationships. She was kind, intelligent, and had a quiet strength that reminded him of Sarah in some ways, though she was very much her own person. Elena was nothing like Rebecca. Where Rebecca had been flashy and attention-seeking, Elena was understated and genuine. She didn't wear expensive clothes or demand to be the center of attention in social situations. Instead, she had a way of making others feel heard and valued, a quality that Marcus found incredibly attractive after his experiences with superficial relationships. Their friendship developed slowly over several months of working together on various community projects. Marcus was careful not to rush things or make assumptions about Elena's interest in him. He had learned the importance of building a solid foundation of mutual respect and shared values before pursuing romance. They would grab coffee after volunteer sessions, discussing their work and discovering shared interests in hiking, reading, and classic movies. When Marcus finally asked Elena out on a proper date, he was nervous in a way he hadn't experienced since high school. This nervousness felt different from the excitement he had felt when pursuing Rebecca. With Rebecca, the nervousness had been about conquest and getting what he wanted. With Elena, it was about hoping he was worthy of her time and attention, and fear that his past mistakes might make him undeserving of her kindness. On their first official date, Marcus made a decision that Dr. Martinez had been encouraging him toward for months. He told Elena about his past relationship and the affair that had destroyed it. He explained how he had hurt someone who loved him deeply, and how that experience had changed him fundamentally. He was prepared for Elena to end the evening early and never speak to him again. Instead, Elena listened thoughtfully and asked questions that showed she was trying to understand rather than judge him. She appreciated his honesty and admitted that she had been hurt in past relationships as well. She had been engaged to someone who had gradually become controlling and emotionally abusive, and it had taken her years to rebuild her confidence and trust in her own judgment about people. Their conversation that night lasted for hours. They talked about the lessons they had learned from their past relationships, their fears about getting hurt again, and their hopes for the future. Marcus felt a connection with Elena that was different from anything he had experienced before. It was based on genuine understanding and acceptance rather than physical attraction or excitement alone. Elena didn't dismiss Marcus's past mistakes, but she could see the genuine remorse and growth in him. She recognized that he had done serious work to understand himself and change his behavior patterns. She had learned through her professional training and personal experience that people could change when they were truly committed to doing the work required. As their relationship developed over the following months, Marcus was constantly amazed by Elena's emotional maturity and wisdom. She had learned how to communicate her needs clearly and directly, something that had been missing in his relationship with Sarah. When they disagreed about something, Elena would address it immediately rather than letting resentment build up. She also encouraged Marcus to share his thoughts and feelings openly, creating the kind of emotional intimacy he had never experienced before. Marcus found himself falling in love with Elena in a way that felt completely different from his previous relationships. With Sarah, his love had been intense but somewhat immature, based more on comfort and convenience than deep understanding. With Rebecca, it hadn't been love at all, just infatuation and lust. With Elena, his feelings grew steadily deeper as he got to know her better, and he found himself loving not just who she was, but who he became when he was with her. Elena challenged Marcus to continue growing as a person. She encouraged his volunteer work and supported his therapy sessions, understanding that personal development was an ongoing process rather than a destination. She also pushed him to reconnect with old friends and family members he had distanced himself from after his breakup with Sarah. Elena helped him understand that isolating himself wasn't the same as taking responsibility for his actions. One of the most important things Elena taught Marcus was how to handle conflict in a healthy way. In his relationship with Sarah, he had avoided difficult conversations and let problems fester until he found an escape route through Rebecca. Elena insisted on addressing issues as they arose, working through disagreements with patience and respect. She showed him that conflict could actually strengthen a relationship when both partners were committed to understanding each other's perspectives. Marcus also learned to appreciate the beauty of routine and stability in a relationship. With Elena, he didn't feel bored or restless when they fell into comfortable patterns. Instead, he found peace and security in knowing that she would be there consistently, supporting him through both good times and challenges. He realized that what he had once seen as boring routine was actually the foundation of lasting love. As their relationship approached the one-year mark, Marcus began thinking about the future in ways he hadn't since his relationship with Sarah. He could envision building a life with Elena, not because it was the expected next step, but because he genuinely wanted to share his experiences with her. He wanted to support her dreams and goals, celebrate her successes, and be there for her during difficult times. However, Marcus still carried the weight of his past mistakes. There were moments when he would see happy couples and think about Sarah, wondering if she had found someone who appreciated her the way he should have. He had learned through mutual friends that Sarah was in a serious relationship, and while he was happy for her, it also served as a constant reminder of what he had lost. Dr. Martinez helped Marcus understand that carrying some regret about his past was healthy and appropriate, as long as it didn't prevent him from embracing his present happiness. She encouraged him to see his relationship with Elena as an opportunity to demonstrate that he had learned from his mistakes, rather than viewing it as a consolation prize for losing Sarah. The real test of Marcus's growth came when he and Elena faced their first major challenge as a couple. Elena's ex-fiancé contacted her, claiming he had changed and wanted another chance. He sent flowers to her workplace and showed up at the community center, making Elena uncomfortable and putting strain on her relationship with Marcus. In the past, Marcus might have seen this as an excuse to distance himself or look for excitement elsewhere. Instead, he supported Elena completely, helping her establish firm boundaries with her ex and making it clear that he was committed to their relationship regardless of outside pressure. His response during this difficult time showed both Elena and himself how much he had truly changed. 4 years after moving to Denver, Marcus received the wedding invitation that would force him to confront his past in a way he had never anticipated. Sarah's wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, forwarded through multiple addresses, before reaching him. As he held the elegant cardstock in his trembling hands, all the progress he had made seemed to dissolve in an instant. Elena found him sitting at their kitchen table that evening, still staring at the invitation with tears in his eyes. She had never seen him so shaken, not even when he had told her about his affair and its aftermath. Elena sat beside him quietly, not pressuring him to speak, but making it clear through her presence that she was there to support him however he needed. When Marcus finally found his voice, he told Elena about the flood of emotions the invitation had triggered. He explained that seeing Sarah's name paired with another man's felt like a final confirmation that his mistakes had permanent consequences. While he was genuinely happy that Sarah had found love again, the invitation also represented the complete and irreversible end of any fantasy he might have harbored about somehow making things right with her. Elena listened with the patience and understanding that had drawn Marcus to her in the first place. She didn't try to minimize his feelings or rush him through the grieving process. Instead, she helped him understand that his reaction was normal and healthy. She reminded him that healing from major life mistakes isn't linear, and that setbacks and difficult moments are part of the journey toward genuine peace. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay awake, thinking about all the what-ifs and might-have-beens that the invitation had brought to the surface. What if he had never met Rebecca? What if he had been mature enough to communicate with Sarah about his feelings of restlessness instead of seeking excitement elsewhere? What if he had appreciated what he had instead of taking it for granted? Elena woke up and found Marcus sitting on their balcony at 3 in the morning, looking out at the city lights with the expression of deep sadness. She wrapped a blanket around both of them and sat with him in silence for a while before gently asking if he wanted to talk. Marcus told her about the guilt that still consumed him, not just about hurting Sarah, but about all the ways his selfish choices had rippled outward to affect other people. He talked about Sarah's family, who had welcomed him warmly and treated him like a son. Her parents had invited him to holiday dinners and family gatherings, and her younger sister had looked up to him as a big brother figure. When the affair came to light, he had lost all of those relationships too. Sarah's mother had called him, once after the breakup, not to yell at him but to express her disappointment in a way that was somehow worse than anger. Elena held his hand as he spoke, understanding that he needed to process these feelings rather than bury them. She had learned through her work with trauma survivors that healing requires facing difficult emotions rather than avoiding them. She encouraged Marcus to continue sharing whatever was on his mind, no matter how painful it might be. Marcus told her about the dreams he still had sometimes, where he and Sarah were still together and none of the betrayal had happened. In these dreams, they would be planning their future, laughing together, or simply enjoying quiet moments that he had failed to appreciate when they were real. He would wake up from these dreams feeling devastated all over again, forced to remember that his choices had made that future impossible. The conversation continued through the early morning hours, with Elena asking thoughtful questions that helped Marcus explore his feelings more deeply. She wanted to understand not just what he was experiencing, but why the wedding invitation had affected him so profoundly. Through their discussion, they realized that the invitation represented more than just Sarah's happiness. It symbolized the finality of his mistakes and the life he could have had. Elena suggested that Marcus consider writing a letter to Sarah, not to send, but as a way of processing his emotions and finding closure. She had used similar techniques in her work, with clients who needed to express feelings to people they could no longer contact. Marcus was hesitant at first, worried that writing to Sarah might be inappropriate given his current relationship with Elena, but Elena reassured him that she understood the importance of this process for his healing. She wasn't threatened by Marcus's continued feelings about Sarah because she recognized them as grief and regret rather than romantic longing. Elena knew that Marcus loved her deeply and was committed to their relationship, but she also understood that his past would always be part of him. Over the next several days, Marcus worked on the letter with Elena's support and encouragement. The writing process was emotionally exhausting, but cathartic. He poured out his regrets, his admiration for the woman Sarah had been and the person she had become, and his genuine happiness for her new chapter in life. He acknowledged the depth of his betrayal and took full responsibility for the pain he had caused. In the letter, Marcus also wrote about the lessons he had learned and the person he had become through his relationship with Elena. He wanted Sarah to know that his mistakes had led to genuine growth and change, not because it would earn him forgiveness, but because he hoped it might bring her some small measure of peace to know that her suffering hadn't been meaningless. Writing the letter helped Marcus realize something important. His relationship with Elena wasn't a consolation prize or a way of replacing what he had lost with Sarah. Elena was the right person for the man he had become, just as Sarah had been right for the man he used to be. His growth and self-awareness had prepared him for a different kind of love, one based on mutual understanding, emotional maturity, and genuine commitment to each other's well-being. After finishing the letter, Marcus felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for years. He still carried regret about his past mistakes, and he always would, but the sharp edge of that pain had softened into something more manageable. He had learned to live with the consequences of his choices, while still embracing the possibility of happiness and love in his present life. Elena watched Marcus work through this process with admiration and love. She saw his vulnerability as strength rather than weakness, and his continued growth as evidence of his character rather than a sign of instability. Their relationship had been tested by this difficult period, and they had emerged stronger and more connected than before. 6 months later, Marcus proposed to Elena during a quiet evening at home, not with grand gestures or expensive displays, but with honest words about his love for her and his commitment to continuing to grow as a partner. Elena said yes, not because she wanted to save him or fix him, but because she loved the man he had become and wanted to build a life with him. As Marcus planned his own wedding, he thought often about Sarah and hoped that she was experiencing the joy and love she deserved. He knew that his wedding would be different from what his marriage to Sarah might have been, but it would be right for who he and Elena were together. He had learned that love isn't about finding someone to complete you, but about becoming complete enough yourself to truly commit to another person's happiness. The invitation to Sarah's wedding remained in Marcus's desk drawer, a reminder of both his biggest mistake and his greatest lesson. He never responded to it formally, knowing that his presence would be unwelcome and inappropriate. Instead, he honored Sarah's happiness by continuing to live the kind of life that proved her influence on him had been meaningful and lasting. Marcus's story became one of genuine redemption, not because he had been forgiven by the person he had wronged, but because he had learned to forgive himself while never forgetting the importance of his choices. He had discovered that the path to becoming a better person often runs through the deepest regrets, and that true love sometimes emerges from the ashes of our worst mistakes.